But why do you see that they find the need to rename themselves or name themselves?
I think it fundamentally has to do with power.
But why do you see that they find the need to rename themselves or name themselves?
I think it fundamentally has to do with power.
Okay, peace family. Now, if you can hear me, put a 1 in the chat. Let's see if it's working now. Peace, peace. Okay, thank you. All right, so peace family, thank you for joining me today. I am so excited to be back here with everyone again. Again, it's been a while. Welcome back to MaatSpeaks. And today, it's the fall equinox. Summer is over, sadly. But I thought what better time to return than the fall equinox? So remember, here at Ma'at Speaks, we aim to bring balance back to our communities through the principles of Ma'at. If you need a reminder of those principles, make sure to go back and check the videos from my Odd Wednesdays. But those principles are truth, justice, order, harmony, righteousness, balance, and reciprocity. We first do it by looking inward, creating harmony within ourselves, and then we aim to create harmony within our families and ultimately our communities. With that being said, today I want you to join me for this dynamic conversation we'll be having today. And before we begin, if you have not already, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. And then you can help this channel grow by sharing this conversation and any other content on my channel. Remember, you can support my channel in a few ways, as you know. Let's see, you can support the channel by going to my Cash App. I have my Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. And also, you can buy me a cup of tea. So I'll put that down here. There you go. But you can buy me some tea, buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. My Cash App is MaatSpeaks. My Venmo is also MaatSpeaks. And my PayPal is Gen Health Revolution. You can follow me on Instagram, and that is also Generational Health Revolution. Okay, so got that all out of the way. So let's take a look at who has joined me here today. All right. So I know I saw her first when first came in this morning. Thank you, Inya, for always coming through. I appreciate you, sis. Um, and she also said, hey, peace. And then Hanifa, my sister, she said, pulling up my chair. Yes. And TWP Popcorn, thank you for always coming through. I appreciate you. And the greatest and best looking moderator in these YouTube streets, Just Do It. Thank you for always being and supporting me. And I saw Sherelle. Sherelle, oh, thank you. Love you too. Pieces. And let's see who else we have. Danique, great day. Thank you. Blessings to you, Danique. All right, so we're going to get started here. Let's see what we have here. So anyway, let's see. We're going to begin. I'm just getting my feet wet again, but I do want to start doing my lives again. Try to be consistent and have these conversations. I have enjoyed having these conversations with everyone. And so I want to get back and have these conversations and continue to build. So before we get deep into the conversation, I want to remind you that as you enter, prepare to open your minds. We have been given a filter that most of us are accustomed to seeing through. And often we jump to defend only what we know and forget that there is so much that we don't know. So it's very important that we study, we research before jumping to defend what you do not know. It's okay to ask questions, engage in healthy debates, but this platform was designed for learning and building with one another in our own communities. So here at Ma'at Speaks, we want to educe a different perspective or filter so we can consciously heal ourselves, name ourselves that is native to who we are. So I want us to be able to create an atmosphere for the future generations, our children, so that they do not have to heal like we've been having to do. So I will drop the link at some point in this conversation if anyone wants to come up, discuss, agree, disagree, whatever you want to do. But you can come up. So this week, I had already planned on coming back this week, and I was going to be talking about celebrities and kind of the whole idea of like celebrity worship. But I decided after seeing a lot of things in social media that concerning the Woman King. So anyway, it's one of those things where I didn't really have intentions of really watching it, in the beginning. Maybe at some point, I was gonna watch it, but anyway, so I just thought that I would go ahead, seeing all of the debates circulating on social media, how our community was debating one another, some projections, you know and so I was kind of surprised. I wasn't surprised that so many people in our community felt the way that they feel, or feel the way that they feel about the movie, but it was more of kind of surprised of, the quote unquote conscious community and how they were responding to the movie. And we have a terrible way of disagreeing with one another. So we actually do not know how to disagree really respectfully or in a healthy manner. And I mean, I've had these discussions before, and I'm just like, what is that? What is it that when someone disagrees with us, we don't know how to engage in a healthy kind of conversation where, just because that person disagrees with me, I should not necessarily take it personal. So you see this a lot. You see this in politics when it's voting time. You see this with people, with celebrities and all that. People will like not want to be friends with you anymore because they take offense that you're disagreeing or that you have an issue. And then, we can look at that kind of on a personal level, because, well, I'm not going to get into that right now, but um like I said, we have a problem with wanting people to kind of feel, think, and behave like we want them to. So what I've learned in the social media, these YouTube spaces, for the most part, is that most people are not here to learn. They're here to project their thoughts, their ideas, and sometimes their pain onto others. And so very few will actually change their frame of thinking, as they're so rooted in whatever is going on with them. So most are just here to debate. So like I said before, I don't want this to necessarily, be a place where we're just debating or just trying to get our thoughts across and not really taking it in. But I want this to be a place where we engage in healthy discussion. So we're going to be talking about The Woman King, not necessarily as a reaction or a review, but more on how we have reacted. So I'm kind of examining how we have reacted to that. And I see some people coming through. Arshawn, peace, Arshawn. Thank you so much. Listening in. Peace, sis. Oh yeah, I did say peace to you already. Okay, I was just making sure. But peace again. So yeah, so you know, I don't want to take anybody and how they feel about the movie. That's not my point here. It's more of, let's looking at this on a deeper level, and kind of, everyone can put their thoughts, comments, however you feel. So let's get started. All right. So the first thing that really caught my eye, and before that, there might be a few spoiler alerts. I'm not gonna really. I don't think what I say will actually spoil the movie for you. Every movie kind of has a plot twist, quote unquote love story, action, um, things like that. So I don't think that I'll necessarily be spoiling it, but if you think that I might be spoiling it, you might not want to watch it. I'm not going to be talking about that right now. What I want to talk about first is something that I initially saw that I was kind of surprised by. So let's first look at this by Dr. Anthony Tony Broder and what he said pertaining to this. So that's really small. Let's see. Okay, so he said the woman king is the closest we've gotten to cinematic reparations. It was magnificent. It made me love Africa and made me love African women more. Did I say it was magnificent? Okay. So I'm not going I'm not going to really dive too deep into what he's saying here. If that's how he felt, that is how he felt. So I'm not going to dissect his words. I could dissect them a little bit, but I don't want to dissect that right now. Um, you know, I just want to go now into the fact that what he said made an impact or had the potential or did make an impact. So, for those of you who do not know him, Dr. Broder has written numerous books highlighting African civilization. He gave us a better understanding of the Nile Valley civilization. And it is said that he was the first African man or African American, however you want to say it, but African man in America that coordinated an archaeological dig in Egypt or Kemet. So he's done a lot for our community. He's given us a lot of knowledge. I have some of his books. I've seen him on, I've listened to him. Think he's great, right? So he made this statement on September 16th. And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, the movie came out that day. Let's see. And I think also he saw the movie, like he saw the movie before like the public, like the actual main public saw it. So yeah, like Hanifa said, he's very well respected, pillar in the Black conscious community. So what happens when someone of this caliber says something like this, right? It has an impact. So people who may have been kind of against the movie or thinking like, nah, I don't want to see that. You have Dr. Broder who's saying, he says this, and then they're like, well, who am I to question this movie if he is talking, if he's speaking like this, so then you have people now saying, okay, I'm gonna go see this because he is very well respected, and so let's talk about what happens in the conscious community for a moment, because people think when they hear the word conscious or conscious community, you know, us woke folks, it's supposed to be like us, and we automatically, it means that we are fully aware. We're sensitive to the programming that happens. We're sensitive to the European ideology. um we're supposed to be kind of like already in a sense deprogrammed from European thought. So when we talk about value systems, because we talk about value systems just in regular, YouTube, that's YouTube streets, when we had talk about the so-called gender war and all that, we talk a lot about value systems. And regular folk, like when it comes to value system, it's more of, we place value in status, money, careers, things that are linked to the structure, the European structure of capitalism. Why? Because those things equate to power in our mind. So money is power. Our careers are power. The status, those status symbols, those are power. They say like, more Black people have bought Mercedes, Benz in this last year, so that all it means power to us, right? But the thing is like in the conscious community, the values that we place more are more aligned to how many degrees a person has, if they have doctor in front of their name, um, you know, how many books they've written, and what they have actually done for in the conscious community, on the community, or just for Black people at large, right? So these value systems that we place on one another is very much from a European thinking pattern. So because those things, because they mean power, it means that I'm better than you, right? Or that I can dominate you, or whatever that may be. So there's a constant battle, like in the what we would call maybe the regular or secular community, where the status and those kind of things that we can already, in the conscious community, we already know they place value in money, careers, status symbols. That's low vibrational. We already know that. But then when you come over to the conscious community, it's like, oh, well, we're not placing value in material things, but then we are equating value to um it's another kind of status, right? You have to have doctor in front of your name, or you have to have done so many things, have written so many books, so it's really kind of that education, that we're now placing value in my opinion, that is still a very European way of thinking of things. That's that Eurocentric way. So what does that mean when you don't have those things? So if you don't have those credentials, you haven't written those books, you haven't written those papers, you don't have those degrees, you are deemed less respected, even if you are having a kind of a higher level of knowledge. And there's a lot of people who are self-educated, and I've seen it over and over again in our community, conscious community, and the community that's not really as quote unquote conscious. um we hear something that we do not like, and we'll ask questions. This happened a lot during the whole jab thing, right? Like if you heard someone say something against the jab, you had a lot of people be like, oh, well, they're not a doctor, so they don't know what they're talking about. So then you also see this on social media a lot, YouTube a lot, the whole idea of when someone starts speaking in a certain way for the community and you find issue with it, then it's like, well, what have you done for the community? Tell me, like, let me line up what you've done for the community with what I've done for the community. How does your activism look? So it comes down to, now you have to prove to me your worth. And so I saw this statement on social media that kind of highlights this. Uh, let me see here. Okay, so let's take a look at this, y'all. So it's small. Sorry, I blocked out their names, to be respectful. And this was under Dr. Broder's. There was a lot of debate going back and forth in his comments. And so one person said, how many of you are actually scholars, PhDs, and any other degrees to substantiate what you claim? Dr. Broder has been researching our history for the past 30 or more years. So y'all can just shut the F up, because you don't know what the hell you talking about. And someone replied and said, does his professional credentials mean that his positions in life must always be agreed upon by the community? That's a great question. And this person responds and says, not agreed upon, but it qualifies him. So you see here where now, because he has all of these credentials, because like he's done all these things for the community. It qualifies him, and any other person who's talking against him now, it does not qualify him. And what else is happening here? It's a God. Is now we have created these people in our community. They're gods now, right? So they are very much at God's status in our minds. And this is something that I'm not saying that I have I'm completely devoid of, right? Like there are some people I consider very high esteem in this community. I love what they say, but I do know that there has not been one person that I've actually listened to. I've listened to people for years, and I can't really say that I have agreed with every single thing that they've said. So, that's something that we have to be able to actually look at and decipher how I can take this, but I don't have to take this. And just because this person has credentials does not mean that my spiritual connection, because this is what we're talking about here, my spiritual connection is less because of that person has credentials. And that is another component. I'll talk about the spiritual aspect of this later, but I think that we have to stop thinking that we always need quote unquote gurus. Like you have the same connection to spirit that I have, or that Dr. Broder has, or that anybody else who has credentials have. Like you have that same ability, the potential of that connection. You just have to hone it. And I've said this before, I said this on someone else's live, that um there's truth that resides in us that only we can activate. So sometimes we listen to others and we place ourselves in dangerous situations because we say, oh, well, this person did it, or this person agrees with it, or this person. And I guarantee you that a lot of these people who are saying that it's okay to go see this, they do know how to decipher and deprogram, not deprogram, but look at the messages. It's just like if this person says this and then you send your child, you say, oh, okay, well, Dr. Broder says that this is great, so then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna take my child, but are you having those conversations afterwards with your child and letting them know, like, these are the messages? Because a child does not have the ability to understand that they're being programmed, just like maybe like we do. And I know there's some adults who don't know that they're being programmed, right? So uh I want to go to before we move on, I want to go to the comments here. Let's see what y'all are saying. Um, yes, he is well respected. That can't be him. I should. um, the movie made him love Africa. That has to be a sales pitch. Okay, so I wasn't gonna get into what he was saying, but that's one of the things that I thought of first. Um, and I don't want to say anything like against him because I do respect him, but I do think that sometimes we do have to understand that there are people in our community that do receive, and I'm not saying he does, so this is not an accusation, but there are people in our community who do receive funding. And on top of that, most people who are involved with these movies, so if there's white people doing these movies, then there are people who are connected to the African history, who are historians, that are actually counseling them. So there's certain things that they're going to put so that they know what to put in there, what spiritual practices that you're supposed to put in there. There's certain things that they do. So that is a great point, because it does almost sound like a sales pitch. I would think this would be something that someone would say if they were involved with the movie. Not sure if he is or not. I don't know. But yeah. That was the same thing I said. Yeah. So Hanifa says, this is a man that has studied African history for a really long time. I highly doubt the movie took him over. Right. Right. Cinematic reparations. I'm just going to be benefit of the doubt. him because his name rings out. Yeah. So cinematic reparations, I'm going to get into that too. Whether we believe that this was actually cinematic reparations, the Broder Files. Yes. The Broder Files. He has a lot of great, there are people who said that they completely woke up after reading the Broder Files. There are celebrities, who are, credit him for a lot of things. So let me give one side eye and be patient. Okay, she started. Oh, you trolling me, Hanifa? Okay, so formal education. Right, right. So we look at formal education as being paramount then. So actually self-education. That is correct. Y'all starting early tonight. Yes. So, yes, value systems are important. Exactly. And I've talked about that before on this channel about value systems and how we have to understand our value system and what that value system is for. It's for our community and for us to progress our community so that we can build our communities. It should not be, our value system should not be placed in someone else's community. We'll talk about that more. Yep, we don't know anything. Right. I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt, even just as an elder. I want to give him grace to have a questionable opinion. Yeah, and that's why I said I'm not really trying to debate whether what his words, like those are his words, those are his feelings. I can't say anything. That's just what it is. I don't know anything else past that. So, yeah, he's done a lot. I've learned from him. So, you know, but yes, the power of influence. And that to me is can be a dangerous thing because not accusing Dr. Broder anyway, but someone else. Like when there are people, that's why they use celebrities. That's why marketing is a thing. It's a thing because it works. So you have celebrities pushing things, and what do people do? They go and they buy that product because a celebrity um has promoted it. So I do feel that a lot of people went and saw this movie because he said, and he wasn't the only person. I think he wasn't the only person in the community who said that it was a great movie. There were others as well. Peace, quantum love. Thank you for coming through. I appreciate you coming through, sis. Okay, I see the copy site. Oh, thank you. All right. What exactly is cinematic reparations? So yes, we're going to get into that piece. Thank you for coming through. I appreciate you. Yes, so we're going to get into that because the cinematic reparations that were in the movie they were like 5 or 10 minutes, because at first I didn't know what that meant. I was like, what are cinematic reparations? But then when they get to the end of the movie, you see like, oh, this is what they're talking about. This is what he's talking about by cinematic reparations. Hey guys, peace to everyone. And oh, Professor Talawa, thank you for coming through. I hear what you're saying. That's actually a fallacy. Appeal to authority. Okay. All right. Also, we can agree, right? We can agree or disagree respectfully. We just have a hard time doing that. I think because we haven't seen it a lot. And a lot of us come from, and some of us, I'm not gonna say a lot of us, some of us come from broken families. We haven't seen relationship wise, we haven't seen it. And then on top of that, we haven't seen it even within the dynamics of family when it comes just to maybe siblings. So it's an intentional work that we have to work on. Communication, I said this before, communication is a skill that we have to learn as a people. And congratulations on your baby. I forgot I meant to email you and tell you congratulations. So I'm glad you're here. Congratulations to you and your compliment. Tell her I said congratulations. I'll stir the pot. I think the way we watch film types into the more subconscious aspect of our indoctrination programming. Mm, I need to read that again. I think the way we watch film types into the more subconscious aspect of our indoctrination programming. That's good. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so let's get back into it. I want to continue and keep coming with the comments. All great comments. So, let's see. Um yeah, so we talked about, okay, so there was a post on social media that I did take issue with. It was because now what we're doing now, we're shaming people, and people shame people for different reasons. But one of the reasons that people are trying to shame people into either watching the movie, stop talking negatively about it. I mean, even Viola Davis, she came out and she said, and I'm paraphrasing, if you don't go see the movie, then black women are not going to be put into these roles anymore, and you're saying that black women cannot lead a cast. So she said something like, and to that effect. So, in a sense, like, you better come watch this movie or you won't see this again, or you better come watch this movie or you're telling Hollywood that black women can't lead a movie, right? So that's a form of shaming. But there was someone, so there are people on social media who are saying different things. One, you can't talk about a movie if you haven't seen the movie. I disagree with that, but I'll get into that in a moment. Also, they're saying things that you have seen the movie, but you fail to understand it from an African context. So I got this off of social media. I saw this. And then you rather focus on events the movie doesn't cover, such as later periods. So here's one thing that I find problematic with this post. One thing that I find problematic is that now we're just putting people into categories. So you either haven't seen it, so you can't talk about it. You have seen the movie, but you don't understand it from an African context, or you only want to focus on the events of movie, but you don't want to talk about, like, you just want to focus on these small details. So to me, again, this is a European way of thinking, because Europeans, they like to categorize us, so we have learned how to put ourselves in like these boxes and these categories, fragment ourselves, because if you disagree with my line of thinking, this is where you fall. There's no room for, expansion. It's just you fall into these categories. So I want to quickly look at these categories that I saw on social media. And here's the first one. You haven't seen the movie. So in my opinion, I think that you have every right to not go see the movie and still discuss your objections on this particular movie. Why? Because the movie is not only showcasing a very controversial time in history and people, but that can be considered, I saw somebody say, like, these that the homie people were psychopaths. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that, but this movie was put together by white women, right? So, and we'll get into that in a moment, but you have every right. It's the same thing that people do, the same shaming tactic that people do when it comes to voting. Like, if you don't vote, you have no right to speak up on the things or the person or whatever happens if you don't vote, right? So we're doing that same kind of tactic, but you have every right to say, "Hey, as a group of people who have been oppressed, I don't think we need to go and watch something that further oppresses us." You have every right to kind of speak up on that, in my opinion. Okay, so now you have seen the movie but failed to understand it from an African context. So the problem I have with this statement is this movie is in it's it's in Africa. it has some semblances of Africa, but is this movie really deriving from an African context if it is written, directed, and it's deriving from African, I'm sorry, from European thought? It's and I love to look back and shout out to my sis Hadifa for sending me a video that I really needed to really listen to. But Dr. Remember Ani, she teaches us not only do we take on the values, the thoughts, behaviors, and mentality of Europeans, but because of this, we act in the service to Europeans to advance them. So she says that everything that is within the culture, so we're talking about the people within that culture, so whatever they create, this is a creation by them. Just because African people are in it does not mean it is our own creation. That is created by them. So that creation is in the fulfillment or to advance that culture, and is based upon them wanting power. So it's very apparent, like when you see certain things, like it's in their media, their music, entertainment, religion, educational systems, the projection of their beauty standards, and they're thinking in order to, and in European thought. So understand that this is a very European thought, that in order to empower them, they had to disempower or oppress another group of people. So that is, why are they doing that? Because they consider certain people to be a threat. And so we're going to come back to that in a moment, but understanding that if you say that you don't understand this from an African context, maybe someone in the chat can help me explain if I'm not seeing this from an African context, because to me, this is not taken from an African context. Because on top of that, if I have been my mind has been colonized, right? And I'm deprogramming my mind. That means most of the actors and actresses in that movie have also been colonized and have a colonized mind. And do we know if they have actually decolonized? And based on what I saw in the movie, no. So, to say that we're not looking at this from an African context, it's a troublesome statement. Okay. And then the third thing, when he said you rather focus on events the movie doesn't cover, such as later periods. So this particular statement, to me, again, Eurocentric statement, as we as African centered people, so I consider myself to be African centered, I consider myself to be a Pan African, we are meant to look at events in chronological order. But not only that, we just can't omit things. So I can understand if you don't know certain things, then you don't know what's there or not there. But we can't just say, you know what, we're just going to omit this from history because we want to be entertained. This is entertainment. We want to see representation. So let's omit this part. And for me, this is a dangerous concept. So let's say, hypothetically, your family was brutally murdered, by a group of people, and they make a movie or they make it into a book. And the movie only focuses on you meeting that group, and y'all were friends, y'all were good friends, and you didn't know these people were gonna murder you, but they only were, showing the good parts. Me being in that family, and that's my family, I would take issue with that, right? Because you'd be like, why aren't they showing that these people are being brutally murdered? They're not telling the whole story. So it's just like, what are we doing? This happens when they talk about certain serial killers, right? They glorify. Why is it that we continue to let them show us things that are glorifying things that are terrible? I believe in telling history. Viola Davis, she also said, if we're going to tell history, I think she said, if we're going to tell history with facts, you might as well make a documentary, right? So, it's certain things that are being said, kind of saying like, and I understand there's so many movies out there. You have the what was the movie, We Are Gods, or I think it was We Are Gods, and there's a whole bunch of white men who are playing these men in Kemet. um there's so many things in history, but you have to understand that we cannot try to project ourselves into their world and say, hey, look at me and represent me, when this is their society anyway. So, like the old movies, what was it, with Charlton Heston, where he was playing um Moses, right? Like things like that. And we sat there and we watched that stuff, especially, if you grew up in Christianity, like you sat there and watched it. And that is, again, what Dr. Marimba Ani talks about. This is all created for them. They want you to see them want us to see them in a certain light. So I'm going to go back and look at these comments, y'all. All right. So shaming. Have to not do that, but problem. Right. I have to not do that, but problem. Yeah, Joe Biden, if you don't for me, you ain't black. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that was one of the biggest shaping. And that's the thing. Like as a people have to stop letting things, because politicians do that all the time, right? I hate that argument. Yeah. Cheryl says it's always these points in time that white people choose to highlight to revive the popular white supremacist notion that Africans sold Africans. So we're all at fault. Right, right. I asked the question, why are they telling this story? Like we have so many stories, right? One that screams at me it's the Haitian Revolution, right? That would be a wonderful story to tell. So there's so many different stories that can be told. I think there are some things that I'm not a historian, I listen to people who are historians. I like to listen. I like to listen to history. So I don't, I'm not a historian, but at the same time, I do think that there are so many stories and there are connections, because there are people who say, well, there's connections from the Dahomey tribe, that because of that, these people came from the Dahomey tribe, and now they were in, I think, I forgot where they said that they were, like Haiti or something like that. But I said, but we have to still understand the progression of that. We cannot say, well, we got a great leader from that tribe, understanding that there was a progression that happened anyway that made those things possible. I wonder what shaming tax will be used for the next election. Huh. Right. They just need to admit their emotional strings were pulled by the trailer and they couldn't wait to go see it. That is the purpose of a trailer, after all. Yes, I'm going to get into those emotional strings in a minute. As Sean says, it's a weird flex to blame Africans for selling Africans. Ain't nobody put a gun to your head and make them buy people or hold them hostage for generations. Right, right. It's the black on black crime, right? Like that's kind of what the first thing that kind of like was screaming at me. Like, this is black on black crime. They like to remind us that we kill each other. They seem to like to remind us of that. You might have to say African cultural context to minimize potential for conflict. Okay, you might have to say African cultural context. And Brother Talawat, could you explain what you mean by what part what did I say that made you say that? A stork dropped me off here. Why the chains, Christian? So this movie is the white feminist tool to pull more Black African women to their side. Also functions as a divide and conquer tactics with Black men and women. I agree. I'm going to get into that as well. I do believe that this was a pure old feminist movie. All right, Sean, please leave the Christians alone. They do hit back. They do hit back. Um, okay, Gods of Egypt. Okay. So there's a documentary about the homie that I can recommend done by Pan Africanists. Okay. All right. I would love to watch that. Yeah, actually, where is their long suffering? I would like, okay, let's see. Like how Black people trying to make white folklore and fairy tale into Black ones. Cinderella with Brandy and now Little Mermaid. Like we don't need their stuff, right? And again, it's still propaganda, right? Like it's just something, because it's not a full Black cast, it's, and then on top of that we have our own that we can tell, so yeah, it's just it when you do that, you're just still stepping into that European thought process because it's like you want to be them, right? You want to be that's the issue that we're kind of having in our relationships now. It's like I don't, but there are Black women who want to be in the they want to be white women in a sense, and then there's Black men who want to be white men. Now it's on a deep level, right? It's on a subconscious level, it's not necessarily conscious. Like most people think that they're Black, and most Black people think they're Black and proud, but they don't understand the intentional work that has to happen with decolonizing the mind. All right, okay, I'm going to behave now. All right, so oh, you say nothing wrong. I say sometimes I add cultural so that way some people don't think because someone is continental African that they're okay, got you, okay, understood. All right, so let's continue. Thank you for all the great comments, keep them coming. Okay, so let's get into this movie a little bit. So again, if um if you haven't seen it and you don't want any spoilers, this might be the time to like put your fingers in your ear. But before for that, like I said, I'm not a historian, but I just don't want to read for anyone who does not know about the kingdom of Dahomey. I just want to say a brief synopsis so we have a clear understanding of what happened. So they existed from about 1600 until 1904 within what is presently known as Benin. Let's see, by the 18th century, the kingdom of Dahomey was on a path of economic growth and expansion. They did that by practicing slave trading, which they did with European traders. So it was a matter of either enslaving others or becoming enslaved yourself. So obviously, Dahomey chose to become the ones who did the enslaving. So the kingdom would capture people and sell them in the Atlantic slave trade in exchange for goods like rifles, tobacco, and alcohol. And the kingdom of Dahomey kept some captives enslaved within its territory, forcing them to work on plantations and cultivate food for its army and royalty. The annual customs of Dahomey would often feature the mass execution of enslaved people for human sacrifice, giving gifts, and ceremonies. And so near the mid 1800s, the kingdom began to decline with pressure to stop slave trading. And then you saw the king who John Boyego portrayed. He was against ending the business of slave trading. And he said, I'll give up anything the British asked me except slavery. And they were responsible for 20% of the transatlantic slave trade. The last enslaved people captured and sold were by Dahomey in 1860. Okay, so let's get into this movie a little bit. Not really a real review, but more of some of the things that I found to be troublesome and how we've kind of engaged in, like, we are not looking at this in a non-European way. So let's look at the first thing. The first thing that jumped out at me, and I'm not going to dive deep into it right now because I'm going to save that for the end as far as like the spiritual practices. But there was a part in the movie that caught me off guard, and maybe because I'm very much, I speak about spirituality. I practice, I try to, connect to my ancestors as much as possible. And so there was a part in the movie where kind of her, I don't know what her name was, but like her right hand woman was telling her to do a particular spiritual practice, and she kind of was like, "Ugh, I don't want to do that." Like, it was almost like she was saying, "That's nonsense. I don't believe in that." Now, later on in the movie, there was a part where they're venerating their ancestors, basically paying homage to their ancestors because the ones who were killed in war. And there was even a part where she's the girl trying to put water on the altar, and she was like, "Oh, she don't want that, she wants this." And she puts like a big old thing of alcohol on there, right? And so it's pointing to the fact that, black people like to drink. So to me, it was a very poor way of showing our spirituality in the movie. Of course, you already know that Europeans have demonized our spirituality anyway. I saw a video clip earlier. I didn't look at it because I didn't, I know how these Christians are. They were talking about in the movie, there was a lot of idolatry in the movie. Um, but anyway, like that's one thing that we know is when they do show our spirituality, it's not a true um it's not a true depiction of our spirituality. It's more of it's seen through European eyes. So most black people who don't practice spirituality or don't think that it's important, they are going to not really care about it anyway. But that's something that popped out at me. So anyway, moving on. The next thing, the way that they portrayed these black men in this movie. I could say so much about the way that these men were portrayed. So they were either soft, or if they were not soft men, they were abusive, or they've done some things that it was definitely a nod to patriarchal, the kind of the patriarchal systems, which we know is that whole idea of feminism. So that was very much apparent. Like, that was blatant. It was like so blatant. There was not really a good, redeemable black man in the movie. Even the king, he just came off. I don't know. It was just an odd depiction of a king, and it was to project, it was kind of like to push forward the idea that these women were stronger. Even the morality piece, right? Now we know that there was nothing in history that ever said that the Dahomey people actually felt sorry for what they did, or that they no longer wanted to participate in the slave trade. But in the movie, the Viola Davis character is showing is telling the king, like, we don't need to do this anymore. Like, we don't need to, it's showing her as the moral compass in the movie. And so again, that goes to shout out to Omawale Africa, because we had a discussion on his channel about the black woman's ego, and that kind of goes to what we were talking about the other night on his channel, the whole idea that black women are the saviors of the community, the saviors of the family. So that's kind of what it was showcasing in that. um so let's see. Okay, so the one of the and there were so many things, so these are just some of the things that kind of like flew out at me was the blatant colorism. That was, you couldn't look away. Like the colorism was there. As soon as this guy, this dude popped up on the screen, you already knew what was about to go down. Like you already knew what he was there for, who was about to well, I won't say fall in love, but you knew whose love interest he was going to be. You kind of already knew. You knew he was going to be like the save, because she kept saying, he's not an enslaver. He's not an enslaver. It was so cringy to me to watch this. Um, but, and the guy who played him, they caked him up with a lot of makeup to make him look, they it was almost like just give him a hint of color, to make him look like he's mixed, but at the same time, it had to make sense for the movie, because he was just like, chilling with the French people, so they had to make it make sense. But in all actuality, my opinion, he was the white savior in the movie. And that's one of the reasons why I disliked, I didn't hate Black Panther, but I disliked that they always have to interject a white savior in the movie. um and these movies are supposed to be for us. Someone on social media made a great point. They said, it's like making a movie, a Holocaust movie, right? And then putting a Nazi as the savior. Okay, the next thing that was annoying, I guess is the right word, was the fact that you have these big, they made these women, and I meant to share a picture, but about how the Dahomey women actually look. But if you've seen the pictures of the actual Dahomey women, and then you see what the women on the movie look like, it's a difference. They wanted these women to, in a sense, have, muscles, be big, masculine in a sense, right? And they're going toe to toe with Black men. So this is very much this kind of feminism under the guise of Black power, right? So this is being done by white women, and we know that feminism is something, um, that Black women took on because it was something that the white women projected onto Black women. They were having issues with their men, and so it was projected onto us. Now, not saying that Black men are perfect, that Black men didn't do anything. That is not what I'm saying here. I'm not saying also that we have to only show the nice parts of our history, right? But, historically, we know that white men and women were more dangerous, but they have you thinking that Black men are more dangerous, right? And so you see this depicted in the movie. You see that there's a part where, um there's a man who's supposed to marry the girl, the 19-year-old girl who's the lead in the one of the leads in the movie, and he slaps her. There's parts where the Viola Davis character is reliving where she was assaulted, and she sees this, and then you have what is what I consider like, what is the word I'm looking for? But it's more of like you're able to get back at your oppressor, or the person who hurt you or attacked you, right? So those are depicted, and that is in essence, that was a projection, right? Like that's a projection from the kind of the feminist mindset, because I have felt like I've been treated, or I've been treated in a certain way for so long. It was a nice thing for women, and Black women in particular, to see that these men were being killed by women, and that they were able to go toe to toe. There was a part where um they were like, the, it was a, what's it called, a spear, like they were like supposed to be putting a spear in their arm, and whoever and it was a black woman against a black man. Like it was just some things there that were just weird, and to me it still paints a dangerous storyline because of what it's trying to say, that that women can go toe to toe, right? It's saying that women can go to toe to toe with men, and that's a dangerous thing because now you see that happening now in society. Women do think that they can do that, and in a sense they're protected. There might be more protected than men are, because if I go toe to toe, with a black man and he hurts me or whatever, I'm most likely going to be protected by the system than he is. Now we know that we both are not really protected by the system, but those are things that do happen. And that's why I've spoken about it before, of how we as black women have a sense of protecting black men in our spaces too, and certain things that we don't do or engage in. But that's not what the conversation is about. So look at the way, and I want to, continue to talk about how the way that they were being shown in that whole feminist ideology, because saying black men are dangerous and they're a threat. And that goes to what Dr. Frances Cress Welsing has said. I want to show a quick video of what she spoke about. One moment. Let's see.
White supremacy is the fear on the part of people who classify themselves as white about white genetic annihilation and the concern for white genetic survival. This would therefore mean logically and specifically that the focus has to be on black males because black people have the greatest genetic potential to produce the black pigment melanin, which gives all skin color. And since we have the greatest, the highest level of genetically determined ability to produce this pigment that can cause white genetic annihilation, and it's only males who can impose sexual intercourse. And so the focus consciously, subconsciously has to zero in on the males. This is why I say that understanding, I'm not talking about institutional racism, I'm talking about a total system construct that develops out of certain patterns of thinking on the part of people who classify themselves as white relative to specific realities that exist on this planet. And so then once that is understood, that the fear of genetic annihilation that takes to the focus on the male, the black male person, as being the number one perceived threat, the number one enemy, and everything flows from that.
So I know a lot of you probably have heard her talk about that and seen that, but I think that is always a good reminder that the black man is a threat, right? And that's what we see in the movie. He is a threat. He needs to be dominated, right? Like he needs to be, put in his place. And so let's go to the comments here. Tell me, politics are a little more complex than slave raiding kingdom, including the European enslaving system. And what's their bedroom? I gotta answer that. I always, I love that you have that term bedroom colonialism. So yeah, you don't necessarily see it, but you see it. You see, not to spoil it, close your ears if you don't want to hear this part, but there's a part where she is the 19-year-old, the lead. She's captured in war, and her and one of the others are going to they're trying to escape, you know. So there's something, and so the dude, the French guy, well, he's mixed, right? So he's like half Dahomey and half French. Silly, just the silliness that was going on in this movie. But anyway, he's half French, half Dahomey, but he looks, you know, he looks almost white, right? Because they had to make it make sense. But anyway, they had a couple encounters before where, you know, even the Viola Davis character, I think it was Viola Davis, who asked her like, "What's going on there?" Right? And so, anyway, he sees her that she's captured, and so he wants to save her. He tries to save her. There ends up where they try to escape, and then he takes her to, I guess, his like room or whatever to keep her safe. Oh no, he actually buys her. No, sorry, he actually purchases her so that he can save her. Forgot that part. And so then there is a moment between the two of them, and yeah, Viola Davis and her, you know, the whole the not the whole army, but part of the army, they go to try to rescue them. And when she hears all the like commotion going out, like she gets up and she doesn't have any clothes on. She has like just something wrapped around him and he doesn't have any clothes on. So you already know that they have engaged in intimacy, you know. So it was weird. I was just like, what's going on here? Like, really? You know, even that, to me, that's just improbable. um it was just, you know, they were just putting whatever they wanted to put in that movie. They had the Dahomey women fight the men. Yes, they did. They did. There was even a part where the at first you could not tell that the Dahomey men were actually fighting with the women, but you start seeing it in the way that they made the men. They just made the men did not look as strong as the women in the movie. That was very apparent. They made the woman look stronger. There was more of a masculine look to the women. Now, not saying that the men looked feminine, but they just came off as weaker, you know, and obviously that was on purpose. Um, so I'm glad I did say that. Yes, it was terrible. The homie women is fighting the oh, and yeah. Okay, so that's a Cynthia G talking pointing well. The black man is the greatest threat to black women. Yep, yep. And so that's what you see portrayed in the movie, with the sexual assaults. You see that, you know, and honestly, even the whole idea of the white men in the movie, and that goes to what they were considering the cinematic reparations. Now, everyone, no matter who is doing the review, I have a different take on the quote unquote cinematic reparations, because the white men in the movie, they they were almost like background noise. There was one white man in the movie, because you had the mixed dude, right? But the white man in the movie who was considered the enslaver, he he didn't come off as the other movies that you know, the other slave movies that you've seen where they're just terrible. He just is kind of he has a relationship with the king, and he doesn't want the king to stop in the movie. He doesn't want the king to stop the slave trade, right? So he comes off as, oh, this is just something that is done in the world, right? Like, this is what happens. This is how people make money. If you don't do this, then your kingdom is going to fall and you're not going to have protection anymore, right? And so he doesn't come off as like, oh, he's this terrible person. Like, he's terrible because he's an enslaver, right? But it's there's like no emotion. Like, there's emotion connected to the African people, but there's no, like, to me, there's no connection to what happens when the white people get murdered by the black people, like by the Africans. There's like no connection there, in my opinion. So there's a lack of not letting white people seem as bad as they really are in this movie, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people say with cinematic reparations because you see them getting killed. that was just like good enough for them. Like, hey, they got killed, and that was cinematic reparations. And that's what they mean by that. And it lasts for like, maybe 5-10 minutes, I guess. Okay. So so I want to talk about, and I guess I'll go through the comments first before I talk about the issues that I have seen with people in their reactions to the movie. So he was just a diplomat. Who was a diplomat? Are you talking about the white guy, or you're talking about the mixed dude? Okay. So bedroom colonial scene, there was a show on Stars called Black Sails, pirate area film. They had a couple seasons with Maroons, and they add this bedroom colonial ship, black woman, white man. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the white boy was a diplomat. Well, I heard him be called the enslaver. That's why I guess he was like the diplomat, but I think he was called, they actually called him the enslaver. Because they wanted you to know that the mixed guy was not the enslaver, right? All right. So here's the issues. And then I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put the link in here if anybody wants to join. So there's the link if you want to join the conversation. Okay. All right. So here's the issue that I have seen with Black people and how they viewed this movie. So a lot of what's been going on is people are saying this is a women's empowerment movie. And I have heard the word liberated being thrown around, right? And so the issue that I have with that, Dr. Ani talks about liberation is to become more like the European, right? So you see this in the movie. So in the movie, in order for the Dahomey in the movie to have what they have, to have expanded like they did, they had to be like the European by enslaving people, right? Like, that was the kind of the idea in the movie, that in order to be liberated in a sense, you had to become more like the European. So as a collective, and I want to share this. I've shared this before on another live, but that idea of mimetic ideation, or that mimetic information. So through indoctrination, mimetic information is shrouded with the intentionality of grasping consciously or unconsciously a subjugator, a subjector, acquiring certain information, ideas, values, beliefs, and behaviors that are valuable for future life performance in the promotion of one's welfare and well-being. So, mimetic information does not necessarily have to be bad. It can be good if it's for the advancement of you. But what is happening for us is that we are in the service of the European and their advancement and their power, right? So with that being said, like when you see this movie, it's coming from that whole you see it like, as women, Black women are seeing it as an empowering or liberation, but it's a Eurocentric thinking process, because you are in our actuality being more like the European, because again, I said before, their thinking process is to empower one group, you must disempower another. And so what do you see in the movie? You see that Black women are feeling empowered because it's that sense of dominating Black men. Now, again, like the only thing you see in the movie where white men are being dominated is at the very end when they're being killed. And it's like was like a handful of them. But in droves, you see Black men being dominated. They're being dominated by killing them. They're being dominated just by how they act, kind of the like softness of them. So you see that it's a European concept because that is seek to dominate. We are not supposed to seek to dominate one another, right? And so the biggest issue I had in the movie was the imbalance of it, right? Like it was very imbalanced. You see how this has projected into our relationships because there's always that whole dichotomy of I want to dominate you. The Black man wants to dominate the Black woman. The Black woman wants to dominate the Black man. And so the pendulum, it has swung, right? Because we cannot dismiss some of the things in our society. Like we are in we have been in a patriarchal society. And so we cannot dismiss that there are some things that are true. But that doesn't mean that they're true for us. And then you have to cultivate that what you choose to do. So if you want to cultivate balance in your relationship, you have to work on that. You have to be intentional with that. You have to get rid of the European thinking ideas that seeks to dominate. We do this in our friendships, we do this in our relationships. We tell our kids that, right? Like we teach that to our children. So it's always coming from a place of domination. So you have women, I've seen posts on social media. You have women that were just like dancing and just excited that this movie happened, and they were just like feeling empowered. But what does that say within yourself? If you are feeling empowered, why are you feeling empowered? Are you feeling empowered because you just saw Black men being dominated? And we have to understand there is some pain there. There are a lot of people who have they when it comes to what they know about us, they know a lot about us. They know how to get to us. They have psychologists who mark, who what is the word I'm looking for? They end up doing things for, commercials, right? For marketing, for commercials. How much more are they going to do those types of things for movies? Because movie is a part, is a tool that they use in order for, again, what did Dr. Marin say? For their advancement, for their power. So they know what gets to us. They know that conversations that we have. They know how many that Black women have been the numbers that Black women have been assaulted, sexually assaulted, and all of these things. So of course, why not put that in the movie where Viola Davis is literally sitting there thinking about the time she even told it to the girl how many times that she had been sexually assaulted over and over again, and then she sees the person, one of the men who assaulted her, and then at the end she was able to get her revenge by killing him, right? So what does that do for you as a Black woman if that has been your story? So they're speaking to Black women's pain at this point, right? And they're speaking to the fact that Black women now want to dominate Black men because they have felt that they have been dominated for so long. So when women say to me that they felt liberated or empowered, I'm like, what is it in yourself that makes you feel that way? What makes you look at this movie and see how Black men were done and treated in this movie, in this whole idea of this Black on Black crime? What is it within yourself that makes you feel empowered from that? What makes you feel liberated from that? And I really would love an answer to that question, because I'm looking at this movie and I'm like, are we looking at the same movie? Okay, so let me calm down. So, Taylor Nubia, peace. Glad to see you here. He said the Black girl magic stuff was very individualistic, racial alienation. Correct. There was a point where I didn't think it was that bad, you know, like the black girl magic, but then you start seeing that you know, the imbalance from that, and how we are projecting, um you know, and there's things. So there's an over, you know, I talked about overcorrection before, um on here. We had a whole like conversation about overcorrection, right? And so what you see is exactly what overcorrection is to make too much of a correction. You kind of hear that like with stocks and things like that, when the stock market overcorrects. So to adjust too much is attempting to offset an error, right? It's a miscalculation. And so then it ends up becoming worse, right? Because it's an overcorrection. And that's what I look at a lot of these things as, because yes, we are, you know, in a we are in a patriarchal society, right? And so what happens is now it's like an overcorrection. And this is a spiritual matter as well. Like, because like spiritually, there are some things that happen, you know. Dr. Membrani talks about the spiritual happening, and then it manifests into matter, right? So a lot of times when things are correcting itself, it can be chaotic. You are going to see things that are just wild, right? We talk about that within Ma'at. We talk about how chaos happens for a reason. It's to bring that order. The issue that I have with that is, while the chaos is going on, you have to understand that it's chaos. You have to know that it's not order. You have to know that there's an issue with it, because our children are watching. And so we have to understand what this does to the psyche of children. If you think it's okay, if you're out here saying, oh, yes, this is great, and the children are watching that, and then what are we doing? Are we looking at what it might be doing to young men's mind, to young boys? You know, so it has an impact on the current generation. So whatever we do in the previous generation has an impact on the current generation. And so, what are we telling our children, you know, when we're letting them watch these types of movies that showcase, like when I said black on black crime, women are strong, women are as strong as men. We have the white saviors. There's an imbalance. There's no showcasing of black love, none, you know, and the colorism aspect in this movie, where you are seeing this African warrior, and she's falling for this white savior, right? And so we continue to talk about these in other movies. Um, my husband brought up, like in the Tyler Perry movies, we can always say in the Tyler Perry movies, I don't watch Tyler Perry movies, but we can always point out the colorism within that. We can always talk about how he makes these quote unquote men who have less melanin into, you know, the good roles and things like that, and the savior complex and all that. But when we see something like this that is empowering women, you know, then it becomes, uh oh, this is great, more representation, we need more of this, you know. And it's like we're drinking poison, like, right? It's like they're in, because they're putting sugar in the tea, right? We drink it up, and we're asking for more. Yes, give us more of this, not caring that the future generations are being poisoned by this. To me, you know, it's just perpetuating toxicity. And I kind of went on a rant there. So he said, on the male side of it, the lone X is the animated Spider-Man Miles Morales film. All of the women he interacts with love it. Yep, I saw that, and I didn't let my children watch that because of that. Yep. Europeans did the same thing to the Chinese. Tons of American cinema depicting Chinese men as weak, and Chinese women wanting sex with white men over Chinese men. Yes. And they actually, I don't know if you had heard about how they were, you know, because it's a communist state, so they can say what's going to be on TV and what's not. So they said that they were actually banning, and I teach Chinese kids, and so there's a lot of things that are happening in China that where they're trying to keep outsiders out at this point, because of the programming that a lot of people especially in America, have done. They don't even want outsiders really teaching their children anymore. There was a lot of I think, a lot of religious stuff being projected onto them. It's a lot of different things, but they're trying to control it at this point. But we're not. We're not, and they have a whole country to do that. But because we are in this society, it's hard for us to do that. Said, I think the bedroom colonialism film industry is about keeping us divided gender wise, and also for white people to use us as surrogates for their population issues, in my opinion. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. The target is our children 15 and under, and I talked about that on a different live. It was more about the jab, but I talked about how a lot of stuff that is happening, they show us before it happens. Because there was a show that I watched, and it was about the children. It was like, that was kind of the plot twist. It was always about the children. Yeah. So okay, so I am going to start wrapping up in just a moment, but I want to talk about Hollywood effects, because I think a lot of people don't really understand social engineering and programming. I was on someone else's live, and I was talking about programming, and they said in the comments, they said, I'm not being programmed. I'm not programmed. And to think that you're not programmed, right? And shout out to I talked to my friend about this, and she was like, yeah, because the programming has been successful. So when you are programmed and you don't know that you're programmed, that has been a success. So, a lot of times we don't understand it, and we don't understand the tools that the European use. And they use everything, every single thing at their disposal. They are using it. They're using our music. They're using the news. They're using the media. They're using what we think are our TV shows. They're using the education system. The education system is the biggest one, because it's easy. It's easy to get a child into that seat and start to program them, so it's all of these things are tools. Every single thing that is in our society is a tool. So you have to be intentional with understanding those things. And actually, something that we teach our kids is the whole idea of checking your mind, right? Like checking your thoughts. Don't let thoughts just pass through your mind. We have been conditioned to do that. Like, you just think whatever you want to think, but really being mindful of actually what you're thinking, why you're thinking it. Even if you come across someone and you think, "Ooh, they're dangerous." Why are you thinking that? Even when it comes to like thinking someone is attractive, you got to kind of decipher that. Like, is that a programming? That's why I dislike the whole conversation of preferences, because we have been programmed to believe that there are we've been programmed with certain beauty standards, even the whole idea of beauty standards and all of that is a way that we are being programmed to not only not love ourselves, but to love the oppressor more, because if I think they're more beautiful, I want to copulate with them. And again, that goes back to what Dr. Frances Cress Wessling said, Genetic annihilation. Okay, so I'm going to share this article really quickly and talk about how this tool, which is media, movies, commercials, all of these things are tools that are used within the let's see here. Okay, hold on. But they're tools that are used within this system that we are all a part of. All right, so, and I'll put the article. Let's see. All right. Let's see, make sure y'all can see that. Okay, it is a little small. But anyway, I'll read it. So, the Hollywood sets the narrative for our country and the world. Movies create the cultural narratives that quietly control our society. The images and messages we see on screen inform our understanding of the world. And critically, they tell us how we should show up as individuals. How should we behave? What's acceptable for me and what's not? Let's see. So, Hollywood has the ability to deliver dreams to girls and boys around the world about what they can be and what the world can be like. It teaches them that their worth is based on their bodies, beauty, weight, and sex appeal. Starting from as young as ages 6 to 8, half of girls and a third of boys believe they should be thinner. Films also teach women and girls that they are not leaders. Reveal that the men assume the roles of corporate leaders 80% of the time, political leaders 90% of the time, entertainment leaders 84%. Okay, so it's not only women who suffer from Hollywood's gender equity, men suffer too. Movies reinforce toxic masculinity, the ideas that being a man means hiding vulnerability, ignoring emotion, and showing aggression. So that's all I'm going to read of that article. But as you can see, the only thing I really wanted to highlight from that is that when we are watching that, if we want to look at this at a very deep level, understand that it's a part. Movies are just a part of their system. Like it's a tool that they're used for what I say in the beginning, for their advancement, for their power. So every single thing that they have created is for their advancement, and so that we can continue to be in service to them. And so let's look at any comments here. They even call it a program. Right. It's a program. It's a programming, right? I have a colleague, very honest with me, was honest and admitted and said they turn off the brain when they watch TV film. That's not good. Yes. And that's something, I'm going to share that real quick. Dr. Phil, Valentine, he has been telling us for years, that we're not supposed to be just being entertained. You got to look at things metaphysically. You got to look at the messages that they're trying to tell you. If you sit down and you watch a movie, watch a show, and you're not seeing any messages in it, then you are not being intentional with the programming. And that's just not a slight to anyone, because we have all done it probably at one point in our life, and sometimes we might still do it. There are shows that I do watch because I want to laugh, right? But I can still watch that show and be like, like that is that's what are they trying to say? What message are they trying to send to me right now? And so it's all about the youth. Exactly. I remember looking at the programming unconsciously. Now there isn't anything I'm not looking at the angles. Right. Correct. And that is about being intentional. So I'm going to share what Dr. Phil Valentine, since I brought his name up, I'm going to share him real quick and what he said about the movie, because we have to know that there are some people that really, you have to understand. So let's look at this really quickly. as I am wrapping up. Let's see. Okay. Oh, and shout out to King Simon Productions. He was on King Simon Productions when he said this. Let's see here. Okay. All right, here, everyone. And all right, there we go.
Intention of this particular
well, the first thing is we are being bombarded with the feminization of entertainment at this particular time. All Marvel right now is diminishing the masculine role and giving it to women. If you know anything about the Dahomey women, yes, they were warriors. Yes, they were. In fact, that's where they took Black Panther and the so-called, his guard. They took it from the story of the Dahomey women. Yeah, but behind them were the men. But there was no way they were going to fight to protect. They were just there as the guardians, as people who essentially would protect the king. They were fierce, yes, but it was the men that always backed them up. There was no way that they were going to let those women, frail as they were, go in there to fight against men without any backup. Fierce they were, yes, but what they were doing is blowing this particular story out of proportion. And again, if you look at the trailer, it was about diminishing the male part as the king, and her taking over because of either his cowardice or his lack of ability or incentive to act, because she knew that the European was there to conquer, which everybody at that time also knew. And that brings up the part with Nzinga.
Yes. Oh, yes. I wanted. We talked.
Okay, so that's all I wanted to share of that. Okay, so really quickly, I want you to look at this this spiritual aspect of this. And I saw someone who said that this movie was a spiritual experience, right? And so the thing is, with this being a spiritual experience, it goes back to what we're talking about, is how this is used as a tool from the white, supremacy doctrine kind of context, because they said that this is being used, as a spiritual experience, but think about all of the things that they're doing to evolve your emotions. So, I did a paper in college about like music and how how they use music to in movies. So, like if it's a horror movie, they use certain music. If they're trying to build suspense, they're using certain music. If they want an emotional bring out some emotion from you, they use certain music, so there were certain things that they were using in the movie. They did do like where all the women were together, they would kind of showcase, I think, like sisterhood, and the woman, one of the lead roles, she was singing, and so there are certain things that they're doing to invoke your emotions, right? Anybody who has watched this has said how much that they loved the cinematography, right? So there's a lot of things, and we know that music also it invokes things from us on a different level. So this is, to me, it's not a spiritual experience, but you're getting a high, right? Just like when you go to church and you hear that music or you hear that choir, you're getting a high. No offense, but that's what it is. It's a spiritual or emotional high that you're getting when that happens. And so, when we look at this from a spiritual context, we have to understand all of those things. There is a reason. I've been to churches where they were very serious. They were very serious about the music in that church because they understood the power that comes with music when you place them in certain ways. You can be listening to a song and you can be vibing with that music and you don't even know what the words. There's been times where you go back and you listen to the words of old music and you were like, whoa, they were saying that? And so, that happens. You have to be careful of not being not what is the word I'm looking for? Not being uh dull to the music, right? Like you can't sleep on the words and what's happening around you because you're being lulled to sleep with the music, right? There's certain times that we do affirmations and things like that. I don't know if people do you do binaural beats and stuff like that, and sometimes you got to be careful with where you get those things from, because there are certain messages that you can put that are going to your subconscious. So a lot of these things we have to look at as spiritually, from the spiritual aspect of what are they trying to do, because your spirit, your subconscious, right, is very much connected to your spirituality. And so if we have been being programmed from day one, right? Day one that we entered the world, that takes intentional work of actually unlayering those programmings. And honestly, there are so many tools that they use. So, also the spiritual aspect of the feminine and the masculine, right? And balancing the two. On that same interview that Dr. Phil Valentine, he talked about that, in order to be a warrior like that, you have to, like, in order to fight like that, you have to be in your masculine. So throughout the whole movie, you primarily just saw masculinity in the movie, right? There was even a woman, I'm not saying, I can't remember who it was, but they were saying that they were redefining femininity. And it's just like, what is redefining femininity? Because I thought Black women said that they no longer wanted to be seen as hard. And, I'm tired of being strong. But now we're redefining femininity to going back to that. So what do we really want femininity to look, and and are we really ready to balance the two? Because that is what it requires. Because if you're leaving this movie empowered because you've seen Black men being dominated, that means there's something within yourself that you need to actually correct. So I don't see this as something that I would ever really show my kids, but also as something that I would look as an empowering movie, or something that I felt liberated from. Some of these things, these words that are being thrown around, to me, they're just kind of dangerous thinking for young minds, especially. And it's just like, are we done being entertained? At what point are we going to be done entertained? We throw out words like, oh, we're in a war, right? We say we're in a war, but then when the person that we're in battle with, or that we're in war with, uses one of their tools, because it's easy for them to use their tools against us. When they use one of their tools, we drink it up, right? We drink their poison. So, I'm going to go through the last few comments. I'm going to wrap it up. Such a excellent breakdown. Thank you. Oh, appreciate you, Inya. Thank you so much. Taylor Nubia says, North Korean film exposes Western propaganda, part 1 of 10. I came across this video years ago. Shows exactly how programming works. Worth a watch. Peace. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Just think I'm gonna watch the video. Good. All right. So that is, I don't think I have much more than that. All I say is, I don't want to take anyone's, if you enjoyed the movie and it did help you, you feel great, that's good. But I just wanted to take an examination of what we're actually doing here. Do we really think that this is a movie that should be empowering us, making us feel liberated? I will say that I would encourage you always, we always, here at MaatSpeaks, I always encourage you to look within. I always encourage us to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and moving forward together. It's going to take a lot of intentional work. So, being mindful of that, being ready to do the intentional work, you know, the children are very important. We really need to be paying attention to our children and what they are being engaged in or being subjected to. So, if they see you listening to certain things, they find it okay. If um, they see you being empowered by this movie, they're not knowing the programming, things like that. That's what they're going to pick up on. So, all I say is that we really pay attention to what we're watching and what we're doing and understand that these are all tools, all of them. All of them are tools for their oppression. I'll end with Dr. Carnegie Woodson quote. He says, "When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. He will find his proper place and will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, there is no back door. He will protect until one is made for his use. His education demands it." Okay, family, I appreciate every one of you. Thank you for participating in the conversation. Thank you for giving your insight, your perspectives. I have enjoyed this conversation. I have enjoyed being back here on my channel at MaatSpeaks. Remember to like, subscribe, share the content, and I just hope to see you again soon. I plan to be here back next week, and I'll see you soon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Peace, family. See you next time.